Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight we are talking UFC 289. We got Amanda Nunes taking on Irene Aldana. 11 fights on this card. Kind of like I know there's a couple cancellations, but pretty light for a pay-per-view. And honestly, let's put it this way, they did not give their best effort here to try to make a great card out of this. I will say the co-main event perhaps justifies the cost of admission, but man, this card's a pretty tough sell to shell out $80 for. But yeah, before we hop into it, why don't we chat last week? Legs, how'd you do?
I wouldn't say killed, but yeah, I lost 2.33 units. Let me pull it up real quick. But yeah, it was mainly those two totals. So I had the under 2.5 in the Caceres Pineda fight, which it is what it is. And then the under 2.5 in the Munoz Santos fight. Again, kind of similar outcome there. Again, it is what it is. And then I had the Kareem Silva fight doesn't go the distance, which looked like easy work. So
yeah, I won 3.3 units. I had Damon Blackshear like plus 115, John Castaneda for 2 units, Tim Elliott for a unit. Then I had a pretty big play on Kai Kara France, and I guess I'll just segue that into, we can briefly just chat about that fight. What did you think of the decision there? Obviously, it's been making the rounds on Twitter this week with a lot of unhappy folks.
Yeah, I expected it close. Like when I was watching live, I was expecting close decision either way. I know a lot of uproars about the round 4 scoring for Albazi. I get that. I just feel like a 1-3 case for Albazi is just not weak, but like I feel like it's thin. You know what I mean? Like I feel like there's more of a merit for a Kai win over 25 minutes. But yeah.
Yes, I guess my view was I thought Kai won the fight. I think pretty clearly, like if you were scoring it with like pride rules, I think Kai would have pretty clearly won the fight. But with that being the case, I was texting some people during the fight, and like after 2 rounds, I was like, it could be 2-0 either side or 1-1. So I thought he clearly won 4 and 5, especially round 4 was one of the clearest rounds of the night. Obviously, that card is bad, but at the same time, yeah, I agree with you. I feel like if you run that exact fight in front of 100 different sets of judges, it doesn't, like, Kai wins it much more often than not. It is thin, but they were 2 close rounds, 1 and 2. So it's like, can you really get that bent out of shape when it's like, you could say Albazi won the first 3 rounds. I think you could make a coherent case. I think it's unlikely in front of most sets of judges that he wins, those 3 rounds, like on multiple cards, but you could make the case. And kind of like going back to what we chatted about a couple weeks ago with the Aljo fight. It's like, yeah, Aljo round 5, probably wrong, but the fight in aggregate probably should have been scored differently. So it's like, yeah, Albazi round 4 is wrong, but it is what it is. I don't think it's a robbery. I think it's just lost a close decision where Kai got pretty unfortunate. But
yeah, I remember we were chatting live in the group chat, and I was like, it's probably 1-1,
Right, exactly. And it's not like, I thought he won round 1, but it's like, it's not as if he blew him away round 1, it
was a close round. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. But anyway, we move on, live and learn. I wish it had gone our way. We're going to win we'll win a split eventually this season. So
I will want to talk about real quick when you talk about the, just the overall card itself and just like the quality of the card. I'm looking at some of the cancellations. I should say a rescheduling. We lost Pereira Wonder Boy, which would have been a sweet fight. And the Hakeem Dawado Lucas Almeida fight as well.
Yeah, and we lost Dawkins Roundtree, which is like whatever is a fight, but I had a pretty big bet on Dawkins there, which is so.
And that would be an electric fight. Like,
someone would probably die.
Yeah. Right, but actually, I think the fight just got rebooked, and I think it is in the Apex, if I'm not mistaken. But
in the Apex this time,
I think so. I have to look. Let me look real quick while we're still on that subject.
that would be a real fucking barn burner. This is way more time than I expected.
UFC Vegas 78.
All right, fair enough.
Yep.
But yeah, we'll jump into it, guys. Please, if you like the show, drop a like and subscribe. Hook your boys up. Help us out here. But yeah, for the algorithm. Like that's what it's all for. But yeah, we'll jump into it. First fight of the night, Diana Belbita, Maria Oliveira. Currently, Oliveira minus 115. Come back on Belbita minus 105. I played Belbita plus 108 for a unit. I still think there's probably value on her personally. I guess for me, there's a couple different things here. I don't really rate Maria Oliveira, and I bet against her with Vanessa Demopoulos. Traditionally, the markets agreed with me. She was a huge underdog against Gloria DePaula in her second UFC fight. Obviously, she won that fight, but it's funny because I think that's why this line is where it is. Obviously, Velveeta had a close fight with DePaula, was line evens there, but I didn't think Oliveira looked particularly good against DePaula. I kind of just felt like she won it on really thin margins and good round sequencing. And in terms of this fight, I expect them to kickbox mostly. I do think Velveeta's got slightly more grappling upside, but I mostly expect a high output kickboxing match. I think Velveeta's got a lot more power and the real chance to hurt her Oliveira here. I mean, we saw Vanessa drop her in her last fight. And I kind of think Maria Oliveira's got some quit in her too. We saw her tap out to standing strikes from Marina Rodriguez a couple years back. And then I just think in the cardio perspective, Velveeta's got a huge edge here. So yeah, I mean, margin should be thin, but I think between the power and the cardio, you got to favor Velveeta here. What do you think, Lags?
I understand making Velveeta a little bit of a bigger favorite, like the 55 to 60%, just, based on strength of schedule, this and that UFC experience. But I just think at the end of the day, it's a low level fight. I don't think the margins, like you said, I don't think the margins are going to be that wide. But again, to your point, Oliveira is one of the worst to do it, really. I mean, again, I was also on Demopoulos, thought there was a clear grappling path there.
Yeah, moving on. We got David Dvorak. He's making his return off of that ugly Manel Kopp fight. He's taking on debutant Steven Ersek. I'm seeing some love in the streets for Steven Ersek this week. Current line, Dvorak minus 275. Comeback on Ersek, plus 235. What are your thoughts, Lags? Are you feeling the Ersek?
I'm not feeling the Ersek. I think Dvorak should largely be fine here. Ersek, largely grappling background. Striking seems pretty rigid, pretty hittable. I think most of the strength and schedule he's fought in Eternal MMA is pretty weak, low-level guys. I think Dvorak should have no issue, either if he chooses a grappling path or if he decides to keep this standing. I think it should be a good fight for him.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think Dvorak's going to absolutely kick the shit out of him, to be quite honest. I'm not really sure what I get it. Nicolau got some top time against Dvorak, but Dvorak generally is a pretty good grappler. He counter grappled pretty well against Nicolau for the most part. He he counter grappled pretty well for the most part in that fight. We saw him grapple pretty competitively when he was fighting Bruno Silva, who's also a pretty good grappler. And so, I don't think Ersek is going to wipe him out on the mat. I'd be shocked at that. I think Dvorak's a better wrestler. Think he should be able to stay safe if he does end up on bottom. Striking, yeah, Dvorak's low volume, but he's a good counter striker. I don't think Ersek has the tools to really kind of prod him from the outside, which is the best way to play it. I think Dvorak should win this fight everywhere. I mean, am I clamoring to lay minus 275? No. I don't bet low volume fighters at minus 275, but I think you could make an argument there's some value on him here. I just do not see it with Ersek. Moving on, though, third fight of the night. We got Blake Bilder taking on Kyle Nelson. Bilder currently big favorite here, minus 240 to Nelson plus 205. Lags, I know you have a bet here. What do you think?
I do like some violence here. And yeah, I mean, I don't think much of Bilder in general. The guy, I think he has durability issues. His striking just doesn't seem very coherent, really. But his grappling seems very solid. I think if he obviously goes to it here against Nelson, who has really a round and a half of gas, I think he can dominate him in the grappling. I like the under 2.5 minus 140. Bilder's there to get cracked on the feet as well by Nelson. So again, wouldn't shock me if Nelson cracks him in the first round.
Yeah, John asked in the chat thoughts on Ersek on DK. I don't feel strongly about him. I think of the two, he's got more value just because, I mean, he's obviously going to grapple more proactively and probably has, I don't think he has more finishing upside, but I mean, he's obviously priced way lower, but I'm not personally not that interested in that fight on DK. Insofar as this fight goes, I see the angle on the under. I've thought about it myself. You know how much I hate betting on juiced unders, but I do see the angle. I really, really want to fade Blake Bilder. I do not think this guy is it. The guy's got virtually no defense. I think he's probably a bit chinny. I've seen him hurt badly multiple times. And he's taken on a much more experienced guy, Kyle Nelson. Usually a recipe for me to pull the trigger on the dog. The thing is, I mean, Kyle Nelson is just so bad. I mean, he is really one of the worst to ever do it in 45. It's shocking he still has a job. I suspect if this wasn't in Canada, he'd be not
That's likely
on
why
this
they're
card
keeping
and
him on the
probably wouldn't
roster.
have
I
a
feel
job.
like, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I think so too. And so like I could see Kyle knocking him out early in this fight. Don't get me wrong, but like the props there, like Nelson ITD plus 275, round 1 plus 500, like that is not
His
really
ITD is only
very
plus 275.
dude. Yeah, I mean that's not
Jeez,
really
no,
attractive
jeez,
at all
no,
to me,
no.
Yeah, so I mean, fuck that. Yeah, and so like I mean he could knock him out, but I think Bilder could knock Nelson out too. He's pretty fragile. I think if Bilder gets on top of him, he probably wrecks him. I mean, let's not forget Matt Sales wrecked Kyle Nelson on top. Yeah, I mean Bilder just has a lot more tools to win this fight. Line's probably fine. Under though, it is an interesting look. I'm thinking about it. Lags. Amanda Zahabi, Aori Kilang. Before you start,
I was gonna say before we start on this one, I was gonna ask you on that one. So why the hate on the under then? You know.
I don't hate the under. I just don't like playing juiced unders. I feel like
That's
it's something
fair.
that everybody in the world is targeting this line. And I'm like, and my view with that is always kind of just more market based. It's like, I'm trying to get an edge on the market. Like, am I really getting a big edge when we're all seeing the same thing? But I am thinking about playing it. Like, I do agree with you. Like in my head, it's like, I feel like they should be closer to minus 200.
That's where I'm at with a lot of these unders. Like there's still edge on like minus 150, minus 160 unders. It just depends on obviously the spots we're talking about.
Yeah. Black, take away the Aori Kilang fight. I am going to hop out real quick just because our sound somehow is off and I'm watching you, not seeing you talk. Like it's really fucking me up in the head right now.
Oh, really? Oh, it's fine on my end.
No. Take away. Start with this fight. Aori Kilang, Eamon Zahabi. I'll be right back.
All right. Well, John fixes those issues, hopefully. I'm just a little bit perplexed by the line movement here. I feel like Arichi Lang at minus 150-ish was probably more so accurate. I feel like he has the more finishing upside here, higher volume of the two. Probably better-ish cardio. I'd say it's probably about the same. My big issue with Arichi Lang is just he seems more like a plotter, kind of. Like he doesn't really set a ton up striking. And even though I do think he can get grounded, Zahabi's not like a great wrestler by any means. Like I don't expect him to be held down long. So I feel like the margins for a Zahabi win, if he does win, are very, very thin. Whereas I feel like Arichi can finish him. I think he has the tools to land way more strikes than him. Yeah, I'm just kind of waiting on the line movement really to play Arichi.
Yeah, I played Arichi Kilang at minus 105 today. I might add to it if it goes dog. I'm not like super passionate about it. And I actually think Zahabi's probably a bit better than he gets credit for, just because I think he is a decent counterpuncher with decent defense. But I mean, with that said, when outside of him knocking out bum-ass Rocco Rodriguez, when has Zahabi ever won a fight cleanly? It's kind of like what we talked about with Arlovsky and Mays last week, right? Like Zahabi's ceiling, in every fight is just so far. Like even his last fight against Tercios was literally swinging at air.
He fought like an idiot.
Fight.
And I bet on Tercios like round 3 decision at good plus money. It's like he fought like an idiot.
My point is Zahabi looked 6 steps ahead of him, and it was a close fight still. Like even looking like way better, it was a very competitive fight down to the last minute. So like my view is, look, he's not going to grapple, and even if he does, Zahabi's not a very good wrestler. He's certainly not a wrestler on the level of like a Durden. So like I don't really think he has that much chance to have big grappling success. Now the feet, he could counter Arichi Kilang for large parts of this fight, but I just think the upside's so much higher. You know, Arichi hits very hard. He throws decent output here. I just end between that. It's like he's got most of the finishing equity, in my opinion. He's got the power optics thing on his side. I think if anybody was going to run away with this and win like a very clean, clear decision, it's almost definitely him. So I look at that and it's just like, I feel like it needs to be in like the minus 130 to minus 150 range at least. I don't see how someone in this weight class with the flaws Zahabi has can fundamentally be picking with someone who's an actual dangerous puncher who throws volume. It just doesn't really make much sense to me. So yeah, I mean, a unit of Arichi Kilang for me. I'll add if he goes dog. I'm pretty honestly, the spookiest thing about this fight is the line movement. If to be quite honest, I'm pretty shocked that people are betting Eamon Zahabi here. Moving on though.
The real question is Eamon Zahabi this week's Nurmagomedov? As John Martian would like to say from last week, you know.
Oh, but I mean, everybody
The
was
line
betting
move.
Nurmagomedov. Oh, yeah.
I'm talking about like line movement versus Zaleski. Yeah.
Moving on though, we got Jasmine Jasudavicius taking on Miranda Maverick. I don't have strong feelings here. I know some pretty sharp people that like the Jasmine side, and I guess on some level I see the merit for it. I don't think Maverick's a very good grappler. I think she's a very mid-average striker, but I think Jasmine's a very bad striker. Even in terms of wrestling, I'm not. I don't think Jasmine is some really dominating wrestler, to be quite honest. I just don't see it. Her wrestling is okay. It's average. Her top game is pretty poor. And I feel as if Maverick's almost getting penalized for getting dominated in the grappling by Blanchfield, who would literally tie Jasmine in a pretzel if she grappled with her. Like, we saw Maverick win a decision against Jillian Robertson. And yeah, Robertson had some success in round 2. It was a close-ish fight. But personally, I think Robertson's grappling is a lot more dominating and threatening from top position than what she's going to get with Jasmine. And I sort of suspect if she puts Jasmine on bottom, she's just going to be able to melt her there. So I look at it, I get the angle on Jasmine. Yeah, if it turns out Maverick is just completely hopeless on bottom, I mean, Jasmine might look like huge value. But ultimately, I feel like if Jasmine can't dominate in top, she's going to probably get blown out here. So it's not really something I'm looking to get behind. What do you think?
I mean, to your initial point about her being a good wrestler, I mean, I was one who didn't even want to bet her in her last fight where she had a massive wrestling edge because, I mean, I just largely don't think she's a great wrestler. So
yeah,
if you're telling me the only way she's alive here is her probably landing takedowns, like I don't, even though like Maverick striking is not that like technical or anything, she's a better striker than Jazz.
So I was going to ask, like, what do you think about the strike? Because Rich was like, I was on his show earlier today and he was saying he liked the striking on the Jasmine side. I just don't see that at all personally.
I mean, I don't think it's like a massive Maverick on the feet, but like, I think Maverick has a pretty clear edge.
Yeah. That's my opinion as well. Yeah. So fuck this fight.
Yep.
Moving on. I'll throw it to you, Legs. We got Nasruddin Imavov. He's taking on Chris, the action man, Curtis. Imavov currently minus 152. Comeback on Curtis plus 132. Anything you feel strongly about here?
Karen Curtis fight week, talking about that for sure. No, passionately about, I mean, I think the line is broadly right though, because I do think Imavov can play that stick and move kind of game. I do think he has good volume, got good, decent enough cardio, I think, here in this fight. Yeah. Obviously that's a big concern. I think he does have a grappling path. Obviously, like, I don't think it's going to be like dominant, but it's always there in the back pocket. I don't know. I don't think there's a ton of meat on the bone, like where the current line's at. Like, how much are you getting at minus 150 in this kind of fight? So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel over. I feel not even over. I want it over. I was hoping this would be like a fairly closely lined total, but it's not. I mean, it's minus 175, which, so I mean, fuck that. I do think, Imavov has his flaws. I've been fairly open about them. I obviously bet Buckley and Strickland against him. But, yeah, I mean, I'm with you here. I feel like Imavov should be able to kind of do what he wants if he fights intelligently. We saw Jack Hermanson, as you mentioned, basically just kind of point strike for 15 minutes and have zero issues easily pacing Curtis. Buckley was doing the exact same thing for the better part of 8 minutes till he got countered. And unlike Buckley, Imavov's huge for the division, has a decent height advantage here, manages distance very well. Obviously, there's a fairly big difference between the pace of a guy like Hermanson and Imavov, but I don't really even think Imavov needs like pace to win this fight, because Curtis is just he's such a stationary fighter, and he has really his lack of leg kicks and his inability to cut off the cage means he has no real ability to shut down guys who want to move on the outside. So yeah, I don't even think Imavov needs that much pace. Like, he really, if he is as good as some people think he is, this should be fairly easy work for him. I even think he's got potentially a decent amount of grappling upside in this fight. We saw Vieira go fucking camera. We saw Vieira go 0 for 20, but Vieira as a wrestler is fairly mid. If we're being honest, he's a decent blast double, but outside of that, doesn't offer a whole lot. Whereas Imavov can go to the clinch and drag him down from there, and I think Imavov could really wreck him from top position. The other side obviously is if Curtis fundamentally changed his game, came forward, bit the mouthpiece, and hit the body from the start, yeah, I think he could win this fight. But when has Chris Curtis done that? You know, like when has he shown us that he is willing to change his approach for a specific matchup? It hasn't happened in his career yet.
I will say, the only thing I will say though is the last fight with Gastelum, he did step on the gas a little bit toward the end of that fight. And the thing is, even Gastelum fighting like an idiot and giving him the brawl that Curtis kind of needed, like I think Kelvin still won that fight pretty clearly. Obviously,
but that's my point. Yeah. Like I agree that he stepped on the gas, but like it's not as if he was pursuing Gastelum. You know, Gastelum was just going into the pocket like a fucking moron and brawling.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of my point. Like, yes, I think Curtis has the tools on paper to win this fight. I just have zero faith that he will use them. But with that said, like you said, that was a lot of words for me to say. I agree. I think Imavov has the tools to look minus 200, but I don't trust the cardio, and Curtis theoretically could make it closer. It's an easy pass for me. I'd be more interested in GTD than anything else, but even that, it's like both of these guys are fairly dangerous. So moving on, though, I'll throw it to you. Eric Anders, Marc-Andre Barriault. Lions been moving all over the place here. Barriault yesterday was like minus 160. Now he's minus 124. Come back on Anders plus 104. What are your thoughts?
Marc-Andre Barriault, the Club and Sub podcast, one of our favorite boys. To be honest, I was looking back at it on his entire run since the Abu fight. He's 4-2, and I've backed him in every fight other than the Fluffy fight. Other than the Fluffy fight and the Jordan Wright fight, I actually backed the doesn't start round 3 there. But yeah, largely because the guy has big volume edges and big cardio edges over most of the guys that he's fighting. The issue I have here is like, I don't think he's going to be easily able to out volume Anders because of the power shots, the power dynamic here. I feel like the bigger shots of Anders and the volume of MAB is going to kind of keep this close. I don't expect a ton of grappling upside from Anders, though. I think if he does try to go to that early, I think he's just going to gas him out. And that's kind of where I'm at. Like, usually MAB is gas pedaling these guys in the 3rd round. And I only think that happens here if Anders just tires himself out early. So I kind of expect a close fight. I think the line's largely right. I just expect MAB to be busier.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? So, like, I was actually very close to pulling the trigger on Anders yesterday when he was at like plus 135. I have very little interest in evens, and I think I've bet MAB in all the same fights that you have as well. Like, I love Barriault, obviously, but it's funny in retrospect because I feel like, look, a lot of those fights he was obvious value, but part of that had to do with just the huge cardio dynamic that was present. But he really kind of underperformed in a lot of those fights. I mean, the guy dropped round 1 to Abu Azaitar, needed him to gas. He went to a close decision with Dalcha, which is a pretty rough look. Even his last fight against Julian Marquez, I felt pretty shitty about that bet around into that fight. You know, he was getting picked apart, and Julian Marquez is terrible. But then again, his pressure held up, and he just gassed him out and put him away. But what I'm saying
that's where I felt like, sorry to cut you off there. That's why I felt like we were talking about that fight. Like, we thought, even though Marquez was going to have a good first round, it was probably only a matter of time because MAB was going to keep
but I also felt like, I mean, Marquez is a horrible striker. Like, I felt like MAB was going to compete very early in that fight with him, you know? And instead he lost the first round very clearly. And so I was looking at this fight and, you know, I guess the same thing could happen, except I trust Anders' cardio a bit more. I do think we've seen MAB get discouraged at times when he's got like a big power counter threat coming back at him. And I think Anders has looked a bit better recently. And so I look at this fight and it's like, I feel like it's just very competitive. I agree. I don't think either guy has much top time upside in them. I think Anders could land a couple takedowns, but I doubt he can control I'd be shocked if he controlled Barriault, to be honest. But even on the feet, MAB tends to fight close to his opponents until they break. And I don't know if he can break Anders here. I think Anders is definitely the bigger hitter. And I think he's less available to hit than Barriault is. So yeah, I mean, Barriault's got the volume edge here. He's probably got a slight cardio edge, but I don't think it's nearly as pronounced as the cardio edge he's had against the guys he's broken in other fights recently. And I think Anders is a lot better than the guys that Barriault's been fighting. And the bottom line is Barriault, if you go back, you know, this guy has not looked very good when he's taken steps up in competition. And I mean, this is not a step up in competition from Anthony Hernandez, but it's a giant step up from Julian Marquez, Jordan Wright, and Dalcha Landrabula, you know? So yeah, I think Pick'em makes sense just because of the volume gap, but I could not, in good conscience, bet MAB in this spot. What do you think of the total here? The over.
What is the total at?
The total at this moment in time is -1. That's fucking heavy. -165 on the over 2.5. That's big.
That's kind of how I feel with the Imavov fight. Same thing. It's like similar pricing on that.
And these are two big guys.
Two big guys who
swing,
chuck leather. Yeah.
Yeah.
Real quick, though, before we move on to the next fight, though, shout out to Eric Anders, though. +188 against Kyle Dawkins last time out.
Dude, Eric Anders is the man. I've always been a fan of Eric Anders. I've been a fan of both these guys. It's really tragic they have to fight each other here. But no one's going to get cut, so we're good.
True.
Anyway, moving on. Dan Ige, Nate Train Landwehr. Ige, big favorite here. You do not often see Dan Ige at -250, but that's what he is here. -250, comeback on Landwehr, +210. I think the line's fine. Maybe it's a tad wide because of Nate's volume and pressure, but I do think Nate's taking a obvious big step up in competition. And despite the fact that Nate throughout his career has shown like crazy recoverability, we have seen this guy hurt many, many, many times. Of the two, I think he's I shouldn't say I think. He is far easier to hit. He's also probably less durable of the two. You know, Ige's looked pretty bulletproof throughout this run. I think Ige's a bit faster. I think he's a bit more precise. I even think, honestly, I feel like there's a chance that he could out grapple Nate here. Like, I don't expect him to go for it, but I mentioned this earlier today. I feel as if everybody thinks of Ige as a striker now, and that is primarily what he does, but people forgot the guy came into the UFC as a grappler. And yeah, Nate's got a sub last fight, but I don't think Nate as a grappler is really anything special. He's got a decent choke game, but other than that, I don't think he brings a ton to the table in that department. I'm not saying I expect Ige to grapple him, to be clear. I just think the grappling is close to favor Ige for me, and I think the striking favors him pretty widely. So yeah, I mean, from that perspective, I think Ige, I think the line makes sense. It's hard. You could make a case for Landwehr via volume and pressure. I wouldn't argue with it. I feel like that's a reasonable case to be made. I just feel like the power optics and the ability to hurt one another massively favors Ige here. So plus, it's not like Ige's ever really had a volume issue. So I don't think Nate's going to just go blow him away on volume. So I have no interest in a money line for me. I think the under at pick is kind of interesting. I haven't played it yet. I might. What are your thoughts here, Legs?
I did play it. The under 2.5.
All right. Did you get plus on it? I missed your best number.
I did too. I was looking at it the other day and I was like, it was like +103. And I was like, not bad. And then I did a little more tape and I'm like, -110. I'm like, I still think it's good there because like, it's like, yeah, Nate has had a fun run. And obviously we'll talk about like matchups and stuff. But I feel like his relentless forward pressure is going to get himself caught here against Ige, who's much cleaner and crisper of a striker. Yeah, I feel like, but talk about the matchup. I feel like Nate probably could have had like a funner fight here. Like, why are we giving him this kind of fight where he could probably just die? Like, why don't we give him like a guy he can outpace and just outguard like a fun fight? Like, I was just looking at the pullouts because I was seeing if Almeida pulled out, but Duwadu pulled out, because I was going to say Duwadu and Nate would have been a fun fight.
Yeah, but they can make that again. I don't know. Sure. I kind of like it because like Nate's 34, 35 years old. Like if he's ever going to have a run, it's got to be now. So
and he's got to beat a guy like Ige, I guess, on the fringe-ish. Yeah.
Plus, it should be. I mean, if you want to make him into a star, you can only. I understand the logic, but I also feel like it's one of those things where guys still have to beat what you put in front of them. You can't become a star just beating up the Austin Lingos of the world. At some point, you have to take a step up, and this is that. So we'll see if Nate passes the test. I personally don't think he's going to, but I'm rooting for him. I love Nate. It would be awesome to see him win and just actually make a run.
Yeah.
Moving on, we got Mike Malott taking on Adam Fugitt. I'm going to play Fugitt here. It's kind of nauseating to me, not even because I hate Fugitt, but I faded him big in his last fight with Kinoshita, which obviously was a horrendous bet. I'm not going to sit here and try to make an argument for Kinoshita. It was a very bad bet. What is disconcerting about it to me is I really just, I like to play these things from a market perspective a lot. And I really hate the fact that like the time to bet Fugitt at big dog was last fight. Like it's like now I'm betting him after he's got some hype behind him instead of betting
and
him
after you faded him. Yeah.
Right. After losing to Morales. It just feels bad. At the same time, Dude, Mike Malott is not it. I really do not think this guy is anything special. Like, he's obviously got some pop and he's got some decent counter punching. But man, you watch this guy's fights. First of all, he took off like 4 years, came back. He's like 31 years old now, or 32 years old. Solomon Renfro backs this guy up for a minute and a half, just absolutely wailing on him. You could see Malott wanted like none of it. No defense in the pocket, just getting hit clean. Steps back, clips him with a counter, drops him, just jumps on his back and subs him. Fights Mickey Gall, or Smitritsky on Contender Series, dives into a guillotine 15 seconds into the fight. Fights Mickey Gall. Mickey Gall, after getting punched in the face a lot in the first 2 minutes, starts walking him down, again, landing heavy on him. He looked to me in that fight like he was wilting pretty hard against Gall. And then he's backed up against the fence, getting wailed on, clips him with a left hook that puts him out. Last fight, Johan Lannis. I mean, Lannis sucks, and he got him down so easily and subbed him. But yeah, I just see this guy's tape, and it's like you go back before that, he used to fight at 145, which is bizarre to see he was at 145.
Insane that he even made that.
Yeah, and now he's at 170. He obviously got knocked out by Dawodu down there. He didn't fight anybody else that was even good. He went to a draw with like a guy who's a below 500 fighter now named Desanya in a fight where he gassed horrendously in Bellator post the first round. And yeah, so I just have weird vibes about Malott. He does throw straight shots. He does hit hard. He's decent at countering, but he's got very limited defense. I don't trust his cardio. I don't even I guess he's a decent grappler. He's been doing all these grappling competitions, but I don't think he's going to be like a dominant grappler in the UFC. And I have this suspicion that, the first time he actually gets dragged deep, he's going to completely collapse here. It looked like it was happening against Renfro. It looked like it was happening against Gall. Can he keep ass-pulling KOs while he's getting beaten up? Maybe, but I don't know how sustainable that is. And now he's getting Fugitt. And what my biggest concern with this fight is like whenever I tape Fugitt, and this happened for the Kinoshita fight too, he's so fucking awkward looking with his optics. And the guy gets hit clean so much, it makes me fucking cringe. I'm always waiting for this guy to get knocked out by every shot that lands.
Yeah.
But he actually tanks shots pretty well. He pressures well. He's a lot longer than Malott is. He's a better wrestler, in my opinion. I think he's very likely got better cardio and much better output. He is the more experienced fighter. And so I look at it, it's like, yeah, I mean, Malott could counter KO him for sure, especially early. But I think Fugitt's going to have plenty of success himself. And I think the later it goes, the more it favors Fugitt here. I think he's got real grappling upside. And I think if he can back Malott up consistently here, he's going to be able to just wail on him. So I don't see with that dynamic how it can. I feel like to think minus 200 makes sense. You have to be pricing Malott KO north of 50%. And I just don't see how you can get there personally. I think this is closer to a pick'em fight. Again, it's nauseating that I'm going to end up betting Fugitt here, but I think he's the clear side. What do you think, Lags?
It's always tough with these guys where it's like, for sure, it's like either knocks him out in the first round or, okay, maybe we get it extended, maybe, this and that, where we're breaking down this fight and like you think the way you think. And I do think Malott probably knocks him out early because I do think he's faster than Fugitt. I think Fugitt defensively isn't that great, but it's like, it's one of those fights breaking it down where it's like, okay, well, if he gets that first round knockout, like we're watching on Saturday, it's like, well, all right, well, how often is that going to happen? You know what I mean? It's so hard to predict these kind of things with these kind of guys that are like round one guys and their cardio just trying to time them right, really, is I guess the best way
and
to put it.
especially round one guys like Malott, who the guys he's finishing in round one aren't even good. He's
having like an adverse time in there, I should say.
Yeah, and he hasn't looked great when he's faced adversity, in my opinion.
Yep, that's a better way to put it. Couldn't word it there. But I like the. I know it's chalky, but I like the fight doesn't go the distance in a parlay. We'll talk about it. In the next fight, what I have it parlayed up with. But yeah, I love violence.
And to Jared's question, Fugitt round 2 is plus 1,000. Fugitt round 3 is plus 1,200. Not horrible. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it. Moving on, we got Charles Oliveira taking on Beneil Dariush. Beneil Dariush is minus 145. Come back on Oliveira plus 125. Tell us what you got, baby.
Banger of a fight. First, we're going to talk about from a market perspective. Beneil's being lined the same as Islam was last fight. And I think that's pretty crazy in itself. Talk about the fight itself, the dynamic. I think both of these guys can get hurt on the feet. I think both have shown durability issues. I think there's a massive gap. I talked to you about this in athleticism and just sheer hardware for Oliveira here. In the clinch, I think the elbows, the knees are going to be nasty. I just don't think it's going to be easy for Dariush to get him down and hold him down. But where I'm looking at here is I like the fight that I was just talking about with the last fight. The fight doesn't go the distance. Minus 250, parlay that up is minus 133. I see violence in this fight. I expect a war. There's really no other way about it. I think Dariush decision is the only way that we get to the end, but I think him holding Oliveira down is going to be a tough ask.
Yeah, I love Charles here, honestly. I think this is kind of insane. Like, forget about the Islam fight. It's like, I mean, Dariush was minus 150 against Tony Ferguson. Like, yeah, I mean, the line was wrong, but like that's what the market thought about him. He was picking with CDF, and that was a reasonably close fight. And I feel like most of the reason Benny is being priced the way he is here is this assumption he top timed Tony Ferguson. He got 7 minutes of control against CDF. Surely he's going to do the same to Charles, except Charles is way better at MMA and at grappling, at least grappling in an MMA context, than CDF or Tony Ferguson is. You know, go back through Charles's whole career. How many guys have top time Charles Oliveira, like successfully? Almost none. Yet Kevin Lee, who has a crushing top game, lost 2 rounds despite getting 6 minutes of control on top of Charles. And so, like, will Benny just be able to eat? Everyone's like, he's going to easily top time. Like, is he? Like, CDF was pretty easily initiating entanglements and initiating sweeps and scrambles there. I feel like Charles can do the same thing. I also feel on the other end, it's kind of weird. Everybody's like, oh, yeah, Benny can top time. And no one's like, oh, can Charles take him down? Why? Because Gamrot couldn't? Like, Gamrot's a very good wrestler, but it's much more of a traditional, you know, he likes open mat wrestling, you know, low single legs, and that's what he specializes in. And Benny was able to defend that fairly well. But, you know, Charles, he's much more about going to the over-under position in the body lock, and he is remarkably strong in those positions. And I'm not saying this, like, I don't think it's a particularly predictive fight given how long ago it was, but you look at those body lock positions, and that's really where Chiesa mugged Benny when they fought years ago, was those same over-under positions. And also, unironically, a lot of the places where Benny likes to go to his takedowns are upper body. I don't think he's going to have a lot of success in the clinch with Charles in the upper body or in the over-under positions. I think in terms of clinch striking, there's a pretty huge edge for Charles in this fight. I think at distance, they're both very hittable. I think both guys have potential durability issues. We've seen Charles fight through them a bit better than Benny, although Benny hasn't gotten KO'd in years either. So, I mean, both guys can be walloped here, and Charles is faster. Charles hits harder. I mean, you look at the guys Benny's fighting, man. Dude, I love Benny. Like, I've bet him on most of this fucking run. But, like, Tony Ferguson,
close, man.
Diego Ferreira, Scott Holtzman, he's getting into fucking brawls with Jakar Close and Drew Dober. You know, like the level of danger and firepower from Charles Oliveira here is so much higher than those guys. Meanwhile, it's like Charles is beating Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, Justin Gaethje, losing to Islam. But yes, I mean, him being a dog to Beneil makes loads of sense. It's really crazy. Like, everybody's like, oh man, I'm telling you, Beneil's going to get this jiu-jitsu, guys. If Beneil's never been subbed in his career, I really just think, you know, the market is massively underrating the chance Charles can have grappling success and the chance that Charles can just put Benny out. Neither guy is great defense. Both of them have been clocked in their career.
Is Oliveira KO?
It's like plus 400, I think I saw. Yeah. I think Charles has more matchup. Could he? Sure. Could do. Yes, that can definitely happen too. Who do you think is better cardio? Because I think it's pretty clearly Oliveira by a fairly large margin. So yeah, I mean, look, it's a dangerous, chaotic fight. I think both guys can definitely get finished here, but my view is the chances of Benny, look, could Benny top time him? Yes, I could definitely be wrong about that. And Benny comes out and just proves me wrong there. But I'd be surprised. I do not think we're looking at a fight where Benny gets 6 to 10 minutes of control. And if that's not the case, I like Charles a fair amount. Yeah, I think Charles' chances of grappling are being underrated. We'll see. I love Charles here. But moving on, main event time. Amanda Nunes coming back off of reclaiming her title against Julianna Pena, taking on Irene Aldana. Nunes minus 325 in this fight. Aldana, the comeback at plus 250 at the moment. I think Nunes should handle business here. I guess the biggest concern for me in terms of Nunes are, well, a couple things. The first thing being, I don't really know how much longer she wants to do this. She seems like somebody who's looking to settle down. It seemed like that was the case before, her fight with Pena, her first fight. Obviously, she has a second kid coming. She showed up for that first fight with Pena completely out of shape and gassed 6 minutes in. And so, I mean, that's all narrative. Who really knows how much it means? But going hand in hand with that is the cardio issue where she gassed horribly against Pena 6 minutes in. And to me, that's really the best case for Aldana here is Nunes potentially gassing. When I look at it stylistically, I don't think Aldana can hang with her on the feet if she stays standing. She could clip her. She hits hard for a female for sure, but Nunes is the far more technical fighter. She's a statistically better fighter at everything, better defense. One of these women was going to split decisions with Lucy Pudilova and close fights with Betchkahea on the feet. One of them was winning decision on the feet against Valentina Shevchenko. I just think the gap in the striking is pretty wide, and I think the gap in the grappling's significantly wider, personally. I think if Amanda gets on top of her, she's going to absolutely wreck her here. I do think there's a decent amount of value on the Nunes sub if you can get better than plus 400 here. But yeah, I mean, look, if Nunes gassed out at this stage of her career at her age and Aldana finished her, I wouldn't be like blown away. But I think in the context of the line, it's like, do I think Aldana wins this more than like 1-5, 1-4? Not really. Would surprise me. And it's not like Aldana is this like 30-year-old fighter who's been making consistent improvement. She's 35 years old. She's been in the UFC for a long time. And we've seen whenever she has taken steps up in competition, it's generally gone poorly. So yeah, I mean, I think Amanda should win this fairly easily. What do you think?
I mean, even to add to your point, one of these women was on their way to losing a decision to Macy Chiasson and getting out grappled in doing so.
Exactly. And Macy is strong, to be fair, but Amanda's a better grappler than she is.
And the level of strength from Amanda Macy is like galaxies, really, in my opinion. Yeah, the only thing for me is the sub here. I have a half unit on it at plus 500. I think that's honestly the only way you could play
Where
this.
Did you play at FanDuel?
DraftKings.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty good. I don't hate that.
I really think that's the only way you could play this. I don't really like the under 2.5 at like minus 105. Like I think you're just getting cute with when she finishes type of thing. I
and Aldana's tough too, man. I don't think Aldana's going to get melted on the feet. I'd be surprised by it. So yeah, agreed. But yeah, so you think Amanda's going to win? I take it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we both think that. Yeah.
No hot takes for me. It's not just like, oh, it's plus 500. It's out there. No, I think she subs her. I think she has a dominant grappling path.
Yeah. So fairly uninteresting card outside of the co-main event. It really is. Opinion. It's really. Dude,
it's funny.
I mean, honestly,
we were just talking about this, and I was looking back. I was like, man, we were talking about another main event, and it's like I feel like this is another main event that like people aren't just giving a shit about, Other than the Kai Kara France fight last weekend.
My thing is, like I said to you last week, I can put up with all the shitty fight night cards. Like I'd rather have more fights than less fights. Like more fights we can bet on, do more shows. Yep. Yeah. But like, if you're going to make me pay $80, like I don't mind paying for it. I really fucking don't. But if you're going to make me pay $80 for a card, what? No, the streams are all behind. That's the problem. Like I'll be on.
They're not that far. They're not that far behind. Oh, that's fair.
But when you have people that are 20 seconds in front of you, so like I don't mind paying for them. But if you're going to make me pay the money, like give me better than this. Like I like Fugitt this week. I hope he wins. I don't want to see Adam Fugitt and Mike Malott and Eric Anders and Marc-Andre Barriault on the main card of a pay-per-view. That is not, especially with a female main event. Like we're basically paying for Charles versus Benny. That's it. And if someone dominates this fight, then it's like, great. I might as well just lit my money on fire. Yeah, I'm asking for. Give me all the shitty fight night cards you want. Just give me good pay-per-views. That's really all I want. Once a month. One good card a month. I would sign up for. Yeah. But that's it tonight, guys. It was fun. Please, again, if you like the show, drop a like and subscribe. We'd appreciate it. As usual, you can follow Lags on Twitter at Danny_Lags, myself at MMA Fox. Good luck on everybody's bets this weekend. We will be back next week, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Good luck.
It's gonna be a late one this weekend. 10 p.m. start for the main card.
Well, that's always the case of pay-per-views. It's the worst.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I guess that's true. That's true. You're right. You're right. You're
It's
right.
literally. Let me tell you something. You want to know what the absolute worst thing about having children is? It's having to fucking get up at 6:30 a.m. after a pay-per-view that ended at 2:30 a.m. Where, especially if you win and you're buzzing and don't want to go to sleep, it's absolute max pain.
Or if you get reverse swept and then the morning after, and then it's like, oh, fuck,
I don't want to.
I know what to do with the kids now.
I have to go get a fucking baba and watch Yo Gabba Gabba on my couch. Great. Anyway, guys, good luck this weekend. Take it easy.
Yep.
Peace.